had a little over a week in Belgrade, a remote work schedule, and a desire to capture some of my impressions of the city in my sketchbook. But between work, plans with people, and trying to explore a new city, drawing is usually one of the first things to disappear. I've been working remotely for many years, and also I spent a pretty intense period living as a digital nomad. So I know this pattern well. This time though, I didn't want to wait for a free afternoon that might never come. I wanted to see whether I could experience the city through drawing, without turning art into another task on my list. So instead of trying to find more time, I changed what I expected from each drawing. Throughout the week, I tried 3 simple approaches that helped me to sketch faster, used the small gaps I actually had, and still bring home something meaningful from the trip. So today is Friday, it's our first full day in Belgrade. I just finished working and now I finally have a few hours to explore the city and hopefully to find a nice place to draw. Luckily, yesterday I finished 2 urgent tasks on our way here, so today I just needed to apply a few comments and finish the landing page I was working on. So let's pack my art supplies and go explore Belgrade. I took my pocket sketchbook, a black Muji pen, a grey marker, a pencil, and a couple of rolls of paper tape with small scissors, in case I found any interesting keepsakes along the way. For this first sketch, I wanted to work with only 3 tones: the white paper, a grey marker, and a black pen. The idea was to give the drawing some depth without spending too much time on details. I went straight to Kalemegdan Fortress, hoping to find a quieter place to draw away from the crowds. And I found a shaded spot overlooking one of the old fortress walls. The contrast between the sunlit stone and the deep shadows immediately caught my attention. It felt perfect for the approach I wanted to try. I started by lightly mapping out the main composition in pencil. Then I used the grey marker to block in the mid-tones and shadows. And after that, I switched to the black pen to define the structure and deepen the darkest parts of the sketch. When I sketch, I tend to overcomplicate the scene and get lost in the details. The problem is that I often can't finish a sketch within the limited time I have. So I need to find another moment to come back to it later. This time though, I feel like I was able to simplify the scene with this 3-tone approach. Instead of trying to recreate the entire view and draw every brick, I focused on the larger shapes, the contrast, and the overall impression of the place. And that made the drawing much easier to fit into the evening, without taking up hours I didn't have. It's been a few days since we arrived in Belgrade and they have been busier than I thought. Since Friday, I haven't touched my sketchbook. But now I have a bit of time before work, so I want to draw a bit and show you another approach I use to make quick and simple sketches. For this spread, I wanted to try a simple idea. As I walked around the city, I took a few quick reference photos, focusing on smaller details rather than complete scenes. I deliberately looked for simpler compositions, straightforward angles, and shapes that would be quicker to draw. I started with a window and balcony. During the drawing process, I simplified it even further compared with the reference, which helped me finish the first rectangle relatively quickly.
The more tightly I cropped each photo, the less there was left to draw. Because these views were closer and more focused, I could fit several of them onto one spread. Depending on how much time you have, you can add more lines and details to the composition, or keep it very minimal. The second view was supposed to follow the same idea. But I clearly didn't zoom in enough, and got carried away with the details again. Apparently, the urge to overcomplicate things doesn't disappear that easily. But I really tried to stick to the concept with the next rectangle. I chose this interesting wall with some brutalist elements and zoomed in much closer. That left me with only a few main lines and shapes to work with. And the rest was just optional, the shadows and the wall texture. On the other page, I wanted to capture a bigger scene to balance out the left side. So instead of adding more small frames, I used one large rectangle that filled almost the entire page. The original reference photo showed a much wider city view, but I zoomed in until only a few buildings and a piece of the park remained. Even though the drawing was physically larger, the tighter crop significantly reduced the amount of detail I had to draw. A smaller drawing doesn't automatically mean a simple one. You can still easily overcomplicate it. I definitely can. So if your goal is to make a quick sketch, try to focus on the main shapes in your reference and capture repeated details with a simplified pattern. For example, I represented the facades of these buildings with the grid, but even just a few vertical lines would be enough. Trees are another good example of how much you can simplify a scene. Instead of trying to draw all the details you see in reality, you could treat them as almost abstract areas of light and shadow. A little hatching and a few solid dark shapes are enough to show the trees without drawing every branch and leaf. And this is what I ended up with. On another morning, I went to the botanical garden before work, hoping to explore a new place and try another approach I use when I want to sketch more quickly. This time, the idea was to capture separate fragments and elements, rather than drawing one complete view. It is very similar to the previous approach, but even simpler, because I wouldn't need to draw any backgrounds or surrounding details. This can be useful when the place feels too complicated to draw as a one complete scene. I chose a few simple plants and filled the empty spaces on the page with these seed models displayed inside the greenhouse. Each element was quick to add on its own, but together they still captured the atmosphere of the place. Since it took little time to fill the spread in the greenhouse, I still had time to make one more sketch outside. My artistic urge was asking for something a little more complex, so I chose this fuller view of the garden. There wasn't a really special shortcut for this one. It was more about using the extra time I had created by making the previous sketch quicker. But I still used a few simplifications, like reducing the amount of detail and treating the greenery in a more abstract way. Later at home, I attached my entrance ticket to the second page. It helped me complete the spread more quickly. But it also added a real piece of the day that the drawing alone couldn't capture. Another tool I've been using to capture my impressions without needing much time and effort is this drawing calendar. It helped me depict each day of the trip on a much smaller scale, but it is still big enough to keep a memory of each day. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to draw every day of the trip right away. So I finished some of the squares later at home. It may not be the same as completing each drawing on location or on the same day, but it still helps me pay closer attention to my daily routine. If you would like to try it too, you can download the calendar for free from the description of this video. On our way to Serbia, and again on the way back, we stopped in Slovenia and spent the night at our friend's place. The next morning, before driving back home, I managed to make a couple of final sketches while we were all hanging out. They didn't take much time, but they still turned this short stop into another part of the story I could keep in my sketchbook. So the main thing I'm taking from this trip is that making art fit more realistically into your life doesn't make it any less meaningful or joyful. And what feels quick, simple or complex will be different for everyone. A drawing doesn't need to be detailed or time-consuming to feel complete. What matters is finding an approach that feels right for you and allows you to enjoy the process. So, make the kind of art you genuinely love, in a way that fits your life. And most importantly, enjoy the process. I hope that these tips can be helpful on your own creative journey. Thank you so much for watching and happy drawing!